Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Voice in the Hollow. I'm your host, Miguel Ortega, and this here is Tran.
Hello, everyone.
After, what is this, 29? We're still awkward about doing that. So, thank you guys for joining us again. We're basically showing the making of an animated, kind of horror, uh, African inspired film that's entirely in Swahili, done in Unreal Engine 5. Yeah. So this was a super productive week for us. Tran is going to start, and she'll show you some of the stuff that she got done, and then I'll show you some stuff that is a continuation of what we were doing last week. And yeah, Tyranius, how's it going?
Okay, so I'll start off first. So I finished last week. I kind of showed a little bit about what I was starting to work on, and I talked a little bit about how I have to approach lighting. I finished laying it out, so this is the final result of this shot, and I'll just kind of cover a few things that I changed up. So initially, before, if you're looking and if you can see through your stream, I have like these fog cards.
Well, first, just start with the fact that you have. It didn't even see the scene. This is all new.
Yeah, this is all new.
So you built this week.
Yes. So I assembled it this week, made some new pieces, and reuse other bits.
So this is the exterior of our ceremony scene, which we've shown a bunch with the two torches and whatever.
Yeah.
The two bonfires.
Yes. So there's nothing really. I don't know. Well, there's a couple of things that I did. So some of the pieces are very modular, like this floor here. This is a custom piece made, and you can see. Let me turn off the translucency selection. You can see that it's just the same piece over and over. When you're at this angle, you kind of don't notice it, but at the same time, like I notice it. So what I did was I made some decals, which are these wet puddles right here. So if you can see, I'm moving some of them like this one. So you can see the water or reflection moving. It's not really that convincing to me as water, but for the distance that I have it at, it works perfectly fine.
It works really well at that distance.
Yeah. So all they are, again, are just decals. So decal, if I go over that, is an actor. So that you can place a decal actor. Within that decal actor, you can then load a decal material. And they're actually very simple and easy to make. So I can show what the master material looks like. Just something like this. Basically, all you have to do on your material domain is you have to set it to defer decal. And I set the blend mode to translucent. And all I have is just this map, right? And just some color corrections. It just has a spec control, a roughness control, and an opacity. And it works pretty well at that level. And then the other thing that I did that I am going to go over is I replaced the fog cards with different type of fog cards. So if you looked at the past stream, I used fog media. What fog media will do is it will stream like an animation of images. So we have elements that are live action, real elements of fog and blowing. And usually we use that all the time, and it worked well. But I felt like it was really hard to control, and they would always break. And they look kind of blobby, and they moved really slow, and I didn't really have a way in Unreal to speed them up, right? So I actually replaced them instead of with fog cards. I'm using flow maps, so they don't break, and they're considered less expensive.
Which was recommended to us by Alex Alvarez, because he was using them. So thank you, Alex.
Yeah. So the fog media has, if your element is like 1,000 frames, Unreal has to load 1,000 frames, and it's never actually embedded into the actual project. It's always reading off from some other drive, so it causes a lot of problems. And I also find it really hard to just correct or change it up. So you can see here, I actually have a few of them, like around here, and then these ones up here. Oops, give me 1 sec. For some reason now I don't know how to navigate. I have one here. Turn them off and on. This one here. And they work really, really great at the distance I have them at. They're not so bad up close either. Right, so they bring a little bit of life. As far as how to make it, I'm going to go over it right now. Just give me 1 second. So I'll just go to my folder, and I'll just create a new one because I don't want to override or destroy anything. I'm just going to create a material and create a material instance from it. So this will be the material I actually assigned onto the card, and this will be my master material. So let me just drop this over here and minimize that. Actually, before I get into that, I'm going to load this flow map painter. So the animation will be based on a flow map, and flow map painter seems like what everyone's using.
This is like an open source.
Yeah, it's free, it's cheap. I know Mari can do this because we've done this in Mari, but Mari is like $1,000, so, and you can't actually preview it. So as I paint, let me just clear this up, and I can't maximize this anymore. This is like the size of the thing. It's very simple, but it's really effective and really easy to use. Right. So I just loaded this program, and again, you can just search Flow Map Painter, and you can get it, and it's free. This is just some image that they're loading in, like that's still. And what happens is, if I'm painting like this, you can see the color, right? So this is actually painting like the actual direction. So the actual stroke that I am making has a big influence. So if I come here and I'm moving from left to right, you can see that it looks like it's trying to move left to right. And if I go this way, or if I go up, or if I go down, it's recording that motion into this map like this. Okay, so I did try to load a custom element, as you can see here. The problem with it is that it's upside down. But the map you paint is not upside down. So if you try to paint this upside down, everything's gonna be upside down. So it was kind of like, all right, that part doesn't work because the image is upside down. I don't know how to flip it. It doesn't seem to be any way. So what I ended up doing was just painting something that I thought was going to work for clouds, and clouds don't just move left or right or up and down. I just kind of tried to give it some kind of motion, and it took a couple tries, right? So let's just say I make something like this, and I'm getting this kind of flow. You don't really have to worry about the intensity. If you look over here, you have a radius, so I can change my brush size, and then you have strength. You can dial the strength a bit inside of Unreal, and you probably don't want anything this extreme anyway, because it would just break and look kind of crazy like what I have here. If you mess up, you can clear the map and you can repaint it. Once you're happy, in order to save, you want to flip the red channel, and you can just hit Bake to Texture, and it will just spit out the map that looks like this. So if I drag and drop this, let me open my content browser, and let me just grab this file. Let's bring it in here. Okay, so here's this map, and let's just say I have a frame of an image. Drag and drop. Wrong one. Okay, so I have two different flow maps. I would just use this, I'll just delete this one, just so it's less confusing. So this is not the one I just painted because I think that one was pretty bad. And then this other image I dragged in was the image that I want to use, the cloud that I want to distort with the flow map. Now, when you load these images in, they're not quite ready to use. You can use them as it is as default, but I haven't gotten that to work quite right. So what I do is I just convert this to a normal map, right? So I set it to normal map DTX5, and that works well. And I'm just going to hit save. And now if I jump over to my new material, I just want to drag and drop these in. I'm probably going to load this onto my other monitor because it's a little tricky. Okay, so here's my normal map, my flow map, and here's my texture sample, which is the cloud. So I'll just plug this into the base color. And now we'll get this to start working. So I want this map to distort this image. So it looks like it's going to move. And let's just set this up like this so I can see what's happening to the image. So the first step, okay, 1 second. My windows are not very organized. Okay. So the first step is we can't use the blue channel. I looked into it. I wasn't really sure why you can't use the blue channel. I assume it has to do with the directions, that this is a 2D thing. And so we just need the red and green. Okay, so if I want to get rid of the blue channel, what I'm going to create is a component mask. So I did that kind of fast, right? With a component mask, you can shut off individual channels. So right now, let's just take a look at it.
That's because it's two-dimensional. So
Yeah.
X and Y.
So if I have all channels on, it just looks like the way my normal map looks, right? And I can say turn off one channel. I have my red channel and then my green channel. So I'm just getting this color. Once I have this, I can start plugging this in. So I'm going to create a texture coordinate because we want to plug this into the UVs, right? So I need this here so it understands what to do. And I'm going to add, and this is very basic, this texture coordinate. And I'm going to plug it in here. And I'm going to stop previewing this. Okay. So once I plugged this in, and now it's reading this norm map. You see it looks really crazy, distorted. So in that case, you kind of want to create a way to control the strength. And we can just do that by creating a multiply. Okay. I'm going to set this to the add. And then I want to have this separate control. And I'm going to convert this to a parameter so I can control this in my instance. And I'll just call this flow strength. So we'll plug this in here. Okay, so by default, the value in here is 0. So you can see there's no distortion. 1 is just what it was doing. So if I start sliding down and lowering the strength, you can see it's not breaking as much. Default values that people seem to like to use is 0.25, and that seems to work all right, at least for now. I also think I don't like the flow map I'm using. So No, it's okay. We'll just keep that one. Okay. So now we have some way of distorting this, and then we have a controller. But the problem now, it doesn't have any animation. Okay, so we want to introduce a node that's going to give us time, right? Which is literally the time node. So I'm going to create a time node. And what I want to do here is I want to multiply this into my texture coordinate. So let's say I create a multiply, and I want to pipe this into here. And I want to bring this into here, and I want to plug my time in. Okay, so now I have time, but it looks really crazy. So one of the nodes that I started using a lot was debug scalar values, because let's say I want to look at what this node is, and I start previewing it. It just looks white, and I don't really have an idea what's going on. But if I plug into here, into the debug scalar values, where I can actually look at the numbers, and I preview it, I realize like, oh, the reason why it looks really white is because the values are just really huge, right? So if you're looking at a map that has a value of 1, it's pure white. And if it hits at a value of 10, it's still pure white. So I have no idea what I'm looking at. Now, what you can do is you can create a frac node. And if I plug this into here, and then I plug this into here, what that does, it sets the value from what it looks like to 0 to almost 1, right? But I'm not getting huge numbers anymore.
It's like a clamp.
Yeah, it's like a clamp. Now, if I set this into here and I stop previewing this, you can see now it doesn't look so crazy, right? Because the time was just so huge. That's what was causing it. Now, the next thing I thought about, and what I'm doing is modified a bit from what I was seeing in other tutorials. And I only modify it because, it's what I'm trying to do myself. I think I need a way to control my speed and time, right? So I'm going to create a multiply. Just hit M. There we are. And I'll create a parameter, and I'll call this speed. And right now it's default 0, but let's just plug it in here. Okay, so at 0, there's no time. If I set it to 1, this is what it's doing. But now if I slow it down to, 0.24, you can see how slow it is. And if I go to 11, it goes really, really crazy. Let's just set it at 0.4. So this is, at least I think, how fast I want it to move. Okay. So now we're getting like motion. And the problem that we're having at this point is it's looping, right? So it hits the end, and then it pops back to the first frame. And that's not going to work very well for our scene. So one of the tricks that people do when I was looking at it is, there's a couple ways you can do this, right? But it's not going to work very well. So one, we don't want the pop, but you also don't want it to cycle the loop or reverse the loop, right? So you don't want it to go from the maximum point here and then have the cloud shrink and have the shrinking cloud grow, because that looks very strange. So this is kind of a workaround for that. What they do is you duplicate the same cloud again, and they offset the animation, and then they blend them together, which I think is super clever. So all I did was just duplicate this up here, and I'm going to use the same texture coordinate. And then for me, sometimes when I'm doing this stuff, it's very easy to get confused. So I try to make sure all my nodes are just kind of lined up clean, because it can be super, super confusing. So this would technically connect here the same way, right? My NOR map is going to go into my multiply, and this would connect into here. So right now, they're both identical. Now what I want to build is this offset, and the offset is just done by add node. And I'm going to plug this into here. It took me a couple of tries to figure out where to place the add node because, again, I made my own modification. And it seemed to work well here. And the value that we're going to do is half, which is 0.5. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is create another frac node because we need that. I know my graph looks really big. It's because it's more organized for me. And now what I've done is plugged in this frac into this with the offset at 0.5. Let's preview this. Okay, so this is working, except it has an offset at 0.5, different from this. And then what we want to do is blend this together with a lerp, which is a linear interpolate. Now if I start previewing this, the default value is 0.5. So you can see the image is doubling up, right? And it's based on this alpha. So if I do it at 0, it's going to show me one map. And I do this at 1, it's going to bounce out to the other one. Okay, so it's a black and white map alpha that's going to control this. Now, what we want to create is a black and white map that is going to bounce or loop, going from black to white and white to black. Okay. And I tried a few things just to experiment. And of course, like the most common way is really the best way. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a multiply. And I'm going to pull this frac into this multiply. And mathematically, this seems to work. I tried things like cosine and all that stuff just to play with it. But the math is, and I'm not great at math, keep creating the wrong vector, is you take the frac, you take time, because time is going to give us that loop, goes to the frac, which makes it not crazy values. And then, sorry, we don't multiply. Yeah, we multiply by 2. And then we subtract by 1. And then that math gives us a nice loop. Now, if I take a look at this to see what the numbers are doing, I do this a lot when I'm figuring stuff out. I have a better understanding of what's happening. It's going to the negative values. So you want to create an absolute node, which will lock, get rid of the negative values, locks it to absolute values. So right here, when I'm looking at this, I can slow this down because I did this a lot where I slowed down. The numbers move too fast. I don't understand exactly what's happening. But you can see here, the numbers go from 0, positive, right, all the way up to 9, and then it reverses and it goes back down, which is what I'm looking for. So we have 0 to 1, 1 to 0, that kind of loop, which is what we're looking for, so we don't have that pop. Let's just break that. And I want to plug this into the alpha here. And I'll just double click here and just create this point because I don't like crossing wires. Okay, let's place that here. And let's just plug that lerp into here. So now it shouldn't pop anymore. So now we're getting a nice blend. And again, if we take a look at this, start previewing. So it goes from dark to white, and then white, it's going to fade back. And that's, again, very important to get this kind of loop. Okay. So that gives me, that's the basic setup, right? It's moving too slow now. Let's just speed it back up. It's 2.4. Okay, so you can see there's no pop. We're having a kind of blend. At this point here, I decided I wanted to adjust some of my texture. And the reason is, I just couldn't do that in the fog medium. It feels like it looks fine here, but when I put this in my scene, like I have this big chunk of white and it feels like it needs to be more broken up. So it's pretty simple. All I did is I grabbed a noise map, which is just a cloud. I exported this out of Substance, and I just want to multiply this on top of it. So I'm just going to rework this space. Okay.
That's just so that there's not like a solid.
Yeah, so it's not solid. So if I just take a look at here, we'll just start, we'll preview it in a second. So I'm just going to create multiply, and I won't plug this into the main network yet. But this does make the graph really large and kind of confusing.
Yeah, this is definitely intimidating.
Yeah. But if you like go through it step by step, at least the way I'm trying to do it is break it down very simple and then add complexity. So if you can see here, now we have this. This has to share basically the same node. So I'm going to add this here. So now this cloud is going to move with it. Without it, you can see this cloud texture. They're both cloud textures. This noise cloud, or no, let's call it noise. This is a cloud texture and this is noise, okay? This noise one doesn't have any movement, so I have to share the same thing into the UV, so now you can see it moving, right? Which I think looks better. Now, I do think, and this is where I get kind of, I want a lot of control. I do want to control the intensity of this map. Right now, I don't have any kind of control with the multiply. So if I create a power, and I'm going to create a parameter, and I'll call this noise strength. Okay, and I'll plug it into here. By default, it's 0. And I'll plug this into B. So now I have power node in between. So power node kind of works like a constant, or not a constant, a contrast node. At 1, that's default. If I go lower than 1, what that will do is decontrast this noise map so it's not as intense. Okay. And then this will just plug into A. And I can just copy this here, select this, and paste the same identical thing here. And again, it looks confusing, but it's totally fine once you, if you work really organized. If you work really sloppy, I think you're going to be in trouble. At least I would be. So let's plug this to here. We're going to share the same node into the UVs, and this is going to plug into B. And now I can stop previewing. And I can see this. Now, I want to expose some of my maps, meaning so I can change them inside of my instance. So what I'll tend to do very often is while I'm working, let's just save this one right here. Okay, let's go back to my content browser and let's take a look at my material. I'll come back here and I'll check. So now I have a control. Let's turn this to unlit. It doesn't really display the animation very well, but I have flow strength, I have the noise strength, and then I have the speed. I would like to come back here. What is this? Oops, over here. And expose this map. So I'm going to convert this to a parameter, and I'm going to call this cloud map. Now, you might think like, okay, you have two of the same textures, so do you have to load them twice? No, you actually don't. If I convert this to a parameter and I use the same exact name, they will be linked together. So what that means, for example, let's say I create let's do a simple one. If I create a parameter like this, and I just call this AAA, and then I copy and paste this, and it has the same exact name, and right now they both have value of 0. If I increase one value in a number, you can see it's increasing the same. So if I set this one to 5, this other node is also 5. And the reason being is their name is exactly the same. So that's actually really neat. That means that if I have this cloud texture and this cloud texture, the same exact name, and I hit save. Let's give it a second. And I jump over to my material instance.
That's amazing, but also super scary.
It is super scary. That's why you have to, when you're doing this, you have to like be really careful how you name your stuff.
Yeah.
But you can see I have one slot here that I'm going to be allowed to replace. And this is not very organized. You can actually name these, right, according to group. So if I come in here and for the group, I set, like call this maps or something. And then this one has the same one. And you can see it's already changed. And I save this. And now it's categorized under 01 maps. If you don't put any kind of naming, it just gives it some default name. So that's it for this flow map, right? I think this works pretty well. It doesn't look perfect at all. So when I was doing this, I'm like, is this better than, than the media maps? It actually does work much nicer once you put it in the scene. So the next step here, now that I have this, is to just set up my shader. So for my fog card, I want to change this to translucent. Okay. And I don't have to put it in my base color. I can just plug this into my emissive color. And I still am probably previewing. Or let's turn this off. To lit. Let's preview this. Let's stop previewing. One second. Wrong one. Should be additive. Okay, there we are. So now we see our fog. Now you do want to plug this into opacity. But there's, if I plug this and I put it in my scene, it will work, but it won't really sit right in my scene. It will just be like a hard card. So if you look at to the bottom where it transitions, like if I put it next to the floor or right above the floor, or cutting into the floor, you just have a hard line cutting right into the ground. So what you want to use is a depth fade. Okay. So now I'm going to work on that. Actually, I think let's create that right here. Depth fade. And I'm just going to leave it down here. And I'll create a comment box, call this depth fade, because it's going to get kind of long. Okay. Now the depth fade is for my opacity. And I want certain controls for my opacity. I like to have a lot of control. So if you don't really need to control, you can just pull from whatever's here, going into my emissive color, basically the main map. But I want separate individual control. So that means normally I would like to have contrast and multiply. So multiply can, change the brightness of something. And let's create a parameter. And I'll call this opacity mult. And set this value at 1, so there's no change. And then I also want to create a power, which is like a contrast. And I want to be able to control the strength. Let's convert this to parameter. Set the value at 1. Okay. And if you don't care about depth fade, that could just be it, right? But we do care about depth fade. So I'm going to multiply I think my graph got really fat. My depth fade here. And this is going to go into my opacity. So again, these are just for color correction. That's all they are. So I can control that. Let's name this or else it's going to become a mess. So this is opacity power. Now here, for the depth fade node, you need to have some way to control the fade distance. And you could leave the opacity at 1, but I do something different. So I'm going to call this fade distance. And default value of 50 works pretty well. And I can just plug this into here. Now, for me, when I'm looking at this, I want to avoid the end of the card look. So if we take a look at this, if I decide to change my mind on something, like make the strength stronger, what will happen is if you see like the texture pushing over there, it will push over here really strong. And I want to mask that out because I want to not have weird artifacts if I decide to break something. So to mask that out, I just need literally, let's pull up a pen. Yeah, I don't know if this puts everyone to sleep, sorry. Okay, I always feel like when I talk about stuff, it's slow. But I want to mask like this. So I want this edge to be black. That way it's going to hide anything if I over exceed the strength. And you can like just create a map, you know, in a texture program, and you can bring it in here, or you can create it procedurally. I do it procedurally. So there's a trick here. If you create a texture coordinate like this, and if you component mask it, let's preview this. Oops. Okay, it looks like this. But let's say, you know, it has red and green channels. If I just go red channel, you see I have this kind of gradient. Now, I want the gradient on the other side. And I can do this by creating a 1 minus, which is basically invert node. And then I can multiply it. So if I take a look at this, you can see this is set to the other side now. It's been flipped. I can multiply them together. And you can see I get that. Now I can do the same thing. Copy this, paste. And then this time, if I take a look at this, preview this node, turn on the green channel, you can see I get the mask at the top, right? So now if we look at this one, I have top and bottom here. And now I can just multiply these together. And this is going to create that map that I'm going to plug into the opacity. So
the green channel, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the green channel. Did I say some wrong thing? I say left. I get my left and right mixed up when I'm talking. So now I have this mask. Now the problem is it's really dark, and I don't really want it to be that dark. So I'm just going to create a multiply, and I'm not going to expose this parameter. I want it to just be set. So let's preview this. And I'm just going to multiply it until it looks brighter. So maybe, let's see what 4 looks like. 4 is probably enough, or 3. And now this is going to go into the opacity. Okay. And now it looks like it's gone. Okay, but it's working. Just we can't see the depth fade in here. I'm just going to save.
Yes, that's exactly right.
What?
No, I am.
Yeah, it's just a gradient. So this is just a trick that someone at some point came up with, and everyone has adapted to use a texture coordinate just to pull out a gradient. Before I learned this trick, I kept going, is there a gradient node? And I didn't see this trick. Someone just gave like a math formula, and I was like, so this stuff can get really mathematical. So I guess mathematically you can create something. There are a bunch of math nodes. Now, once I have this, let's look at my...
It would be much easier if they just had a stupid radial node, like Nuke.
Yeah.
Multiply it.
Once I have something like that, it's ready to go. Or almost ready to go. I think I'm missing a couple of things.
Couldn't you just bring in a radial texture and just...
Yeah, you could. You don't have to do any of that.
Yeah.
That's why I was like, yeah, you don't have to do this. I do want this here. I do want to be able to control the brightness of this. Let's call this, just multiply. Set this at 1. Here. And then I want to be able to also multiply a color into here. Let's convert this to a parameter. Just call it color tint. And give this a color. Okay. Now I'm not previewing anything. I should be able to see something. Okay, I think my opacity is really weak. Let's see. Okay, so that is fine. I have my fade distance. Oh, not my power. Right now I can't see anything. So I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Okay, here it is. My opacity is really faded out. So I'm going to just set my opacity multiplier. I mean, you do have to have these controls because things disappear, right? So this is just color correction for my opacity from this point. So I'm just going to set it to something we can see. And I think this works. And if I go to my material instance, this is not organized, but you know, normally I would organize it by naming it, but it works. So now if I create a card here, let's place an actor, place a plane. Make sure
you have to put it on a plane.
Yeah, it's got to be on a plane. I mean, you probably could put it on something dimensional. I don't know.
The problem with putting it on something dimensional is that you're limited to the UV, so you might get an ugly seam right on the UV line.
Oh yeah, you probably would. You want to turn off cast shadows, because it could be the shadows when they cast. It doesn't cast in the shape of the cloud. It casts in the shape of the entire.
Can I just say something real quick?
Polygon.
Something you could do. The question was, could you project it on a plane or like a cloud-like mesh? One thing that I do in Nuke, because I use this technique a lot in Nuke, it's not. I just use the footage, but on a card. I don't do the what is this called? Technically called vector. It's a vector map.
Yeah, it is a vector map.
But you could distort the plane so that it has some volume, but it's still basically a plane. So you could pull the front, like the center, out a little bit, and then push the sides to the back a little bit, so that if there is any kind of movement, there's a little bit of parallax. But that's probably as far as I would push it.
If you want something dimensional, you would just need to create a fog volume, which is something very different. Let's just drop this in here. Okay, so now I have my animated cloud.
Yeah, it's 2.5D. It's more 3D. It's just it's the least sexy 3D. It's a
yes,
slightly distorted card, but it is 3D.
But it works pretty well. So
yeah.
Let's see what the depth fade does. So without the depth fade, let me just make this super ugly, meaning like overly bright. Okay, so everything's like
really sexy. Yeah.
Okay, so I've had my cloud looking way too strong, but everyone can see it. My depth fade here just controls how it fades into the back. So you can see that it's interacting with the ground, but look at the, let's put it right here where there's more stuff. Okay, so now I have this, a bunch of like multiple objects.
Works pretty well.
Works pretty well. So like if I have this at 0, this is what happens if you don't have the depth fade, right? So your card will just sit like this really hard line, if everyone can see that. And the depth fade is pretty impressive. So it gives us, let's start at 50 again, a nice fade, but it also like feels like it blends into the environment like a Z depth. So you can see how it's moving back in space.
Yeah, that's really cool.
It's super powerful. Like we never use this in like Maya with V-Ray.
I use it. Well, I use this when I'm doing comping.
Yeah, you do that when you're comping, and you use a Z depth to comp it in.
Yeah, so I would grab the element, I would position it wherever I want it to be in an element, meaning like real smoke footage, but then it would look overlaid, not like it's blending in. So then I would get the Z depth and multiply it to that, and it would do exactly this.
Yeah. So this is super powerful, and it's a common technique. We've used fog volumes, and I decided they kind of suck, and stopped using them. And the most simple thing, well, the shader is kind of a little bit more complex, but it is at the end of the day, once you set it up, it's pretty simple, and it's the most effective. You can see how, look how it's like fading if you pay attention to the bottles back here. Well, they're bottles if you couldn't tell. But as I increase it, it's just fading like on Z, which is really incredible. And it feels really a part of the environment because of it. So that's why we're using it. And we also can control the speed. So now I have my speed controller, and if I want, I can move really fast or I can move really slow. And I also have flow strength. So if I really wanted to, I don't know why I would want this. If I really wanted to be really strong, I could do that. The stuff in Unreal just amazes me, that what it can do, and how much control you can have over anything. Let's see. Could you show how it interacts with the table that I have in the scene? Did I show that just now? You mean this table right here? I mean, it is, if I put it here and I adjust my fade, it's just interacting with the environment on Z. Hopefully, does that answer your question?
Yeah, he said yep.
Okay.
So Elvira creeped in.
Yeah, it's just amazing. I really like Unreal. It's just like, okay, but definitely don't want anything like this. But this is better than the fog media. The fog media was so much setup, constantly breaking, and very little control. Yes, and actually it moves so slow, it just looked like a blob.
What happens when you look at it from a different angle? It absolutely does not work.
Yeah, it has to be, the card generally you want it to face you.
You could get away with murder. Like, you'd be surprised how much this is used on film. Again, not the exact same thing, but how much elements are actually just cards.
Yeah.
So you just have to be strategic about it.
But even in movies, it's cards too, right?
Yeah.
So not all the time. I mean, you do have effects artists and everything.
Yeah. So some of these, I want to put them on here because some people can't see. Some are on YouTube. Some are on because it's 2D from far away. You can't tell, but close up you can tell. Yeah.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
even close up, you'd be surprised how much you could get away with as long as you strategically layer them. You could get away with it a lot. Like I use this all the time in Nuke with cards, and you'd be surprised.
Could you use it in games like Distant Fog? I
Yeah,
think
totally.
this is like game technique, so
Yeah.
it's something built for that, and it's supposed to be really cheap. Oops.
I think we keep undoing.
Yeah, we keep undoing each other.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I don't know. The other option we would use is maybe in the future some VDBs, which are actually like a dense, like a real fog, like a real simulated fog. Even in film, though, you wouldn't want to use that because VDBs take forever to render, depending on the renderer you're using. I think Redshift is the fastest at it, but it's slow. It's slow to render. Like
Crazy slow.
it is so
In
so
V-Ray,
so
it's
so
crazy
so
slow.
so slow. It can kill. Like it was like making our render 10 times longer. So-
Yeah, and we were rendering like 3 clouds, remember, on that Griffin project, and we couldn't do it. It was like 4 clouds, 5 clouds, and it was killing us. So
I think you can use it for whatever. It's just a chat. You can get it to work up close, just not like the way I have it right now. Obviously, like the flow strength is ridiculous. I have it over the top. So I think if I were to get up close to, say, this one that's kind of dialed in, it works pretty well. So you can see one here that is more subtle. Well, I don't think the lighting looks very good this close. So it's falling apart in different ways. But as far as the fog, if I take a look at it, it's actually all right. It's convincing. It's faded enough. But if I really wanted to make it look better, I would just create multiple materials, like different ones, right? Like you can break it up. So at the end, what I did, if you look at my content browser, I have map A, B, C, and D, and they all have just different maps that I can put in here, and you can layer them in front of each other, and that actually would create the illusion of depth. And you can see how it interacts well with the environment. So if I were to grab,
the most important thing is just how fast this is. Like we cannot stress enough how problematic bringing in the actual media is into Unreal. It's crazy, crazy slow.
yeah, it's very slow. But you can see, like, if you have a character walking through it, it works pretty well. So I'm pretty impressed. So thanks, Alex, if you decide to watch this. That recommendation is a huge, huge difference in our stuff.
Have we tried VDB in Unreal? Not yet, but it's on it's probably the next thing we're gonna tackle. I'm just afraid that we're gonna bring it in and it looks really good, and then we're gonna have to re-render everything.
I'm
So,
sure it looks good, but I just can't imagine that being, I don't know. Unreal is always really surprising in a positive way. I just couldn't imagine it being really fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, everyone would just be throwing VDBs all over their scene. You can purchase VDBs nowadays, right? So go online, someone's selling like fog or clouds and things like that. So, but I don't see people going nuts over it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's it for my part.
Cool. So, all right. So
Well, he's saying here, I imported pre-made clouds and Unreal. See, okay, so that was the concern that I would have. So yeah,
also it killed your machine.
yeah. I mean, we know how heavy it is, so I don't know. We'll give it a shot one of these days.
So, All right, cool. Do you want me to take over?
Yeah.
Okay. So give me a second, because I press save right before, and my save whenever we're streaming takes forever. Give me 1 second. Okay. So, all right, so I'm gonna take over. So last week on the stream, we started like doing some of the chase sequence stuff. Like we literally started it like live, and it was like the first few shots. So this week I was just going in and processing all of the clips and starting to put them together in an edit. And I'll show you what we have so far. So this is very much work in progress, not final. This is our original music by our friend Dan, but it's not the final. So check this out. So again, this is very early. Some shots, the spears are going to be missing. Other shots, they're not. The faces are not done on all of them. On some of them, they are. None of the clothing is simulated, but whatever. Here it is. So that's our chase sequence in progress. So we did that all this week, which is pretty cool. We got a lot done.
That's a big accomplishment. I thought it was going to take longer to pull the edit together.
So yeah, so that's all the renders, cleaning up all the mocap. We still have to do some of the other ones, but it's I'm feel pretty good about it. So I think some Love Death Robot episode 5.
That's cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So so we're pretty happy with this. So this is obviously this is going to be the start of the project, and then the thing we're missing here is we have an aerial shot, which I didn't think it was going to be that difficult, but it's turning out to be quite a pain in the ass. So
So I think that stuff is pain. so yeah.
Yeah.
It is difficult to try to make every shot look good. I mean, that sounds like such a common sense, no brainer statement, but it's harder. It's harder for me in Unreal to get it to look good than it is the way we worked before.
Well, the first thing we realized is we actually don't want to use our real aerial, like what our actual map looks like for the super wide angle. We want to do something from scratch, and then like crash zoom down to the chase. That's why I have a little bit of space here in the edit. So like you hear, it's going to black, but let me put this on. So we have like, so that will be the push in, and then boom, it would zoom in really fast. So, yeah, this.
I think it's good. I think it tells the story well. You have one girl who doesn't know what the hell she's doing, and then you have the other one who's really adept and much more athletic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can see, like on this one, for example, like the cloth sim is not there for this little guy, but it's there for this one. And the tough thing was trying to get a sense of energy on all of these shots, and how do you transition between shots to get that momentum. So you can see doing a lot of tricks like that. Like these are clearly two completely different shots, but they blend together in a way that almost feels like it's one continuous shot, even though you could see that that would make no sense because this guy is much higher. So there's a lot of those kind of whip pans. This may be one of my favorite shots. This one here. This one needs the lighting redone. I don't like the lighting.
No, but it's not at the light, like it has some decent basic lighting, but that's not what you're concerned about
Our
at this
concern was
point.
just getting the edit in place. And
Yeah,
then
the
we'll
edit.
fine-tune all
So
that.
it's getting the edit, having it make sense, and then trying to tell the story and the action, which hopefully you can see. Like one girl is much more confident, and the other one is not. Can you play it again one more time?
Yeah. So here, for example, another thing is like a lot of debris and like little rocks need to shoot out when this rock hits. I'll play it again. Yeah. So yeah, I'm pretty
Yeah,
happy
the
with it.
soundtrack is really kick-ass. It's Dan.
Yeah, that's a
Dan's
good
the-
friend.
Dan's just amazing.
So this, for example, like I want like this red dust blowing, dirt blowing in the air here as her leg is like sliding across this.
Yeah, and you feel the
And
impact.
here like a cloud of dirt coming at the camera while this little guy barely makes it out. You see here, like for example, she's not holding her spear because this is like one of the earliest shots. I think this is one of the shots that we did
On the stream.
literally on the stream. And one of the things that was funny is the actress that we used for the mocap. She's she's great, but even though she was running as fast as she could, it didn't feel fast enough. So we actually ended up mixing the mocap that we shot
What's it? Yeah.
with some. So this is her. This is all her, all of them, and then this one is mocap that we got off of Mixamo of someone running, and then I just added the spear in her hand and then cleaned that up. This is really her. This is really her. This is all her. And then this is the Mixamo mocap, and it just looks like she's hauling ass. But one of the things
That's also Mixamo.
Yeah, this one is Mixamo.
The jump over.
That one is ours.
So you guys want to learn a homemade production? This is it.
Yeah, this was Mixamo.
Yeah. And to be fair, like we recorded her in our house, which has like a limited
Amount of running space.
Yeah, so she could never pick up, and she's very fit.
She probably could have picked up much more speed for sure.
Yeah, but not in our house.
Because as you can see behind us, there's like this.
Yeah, so she
everywhere.
was amazing. She was just like, I'm just gonna run in this house.
No, but my point was like here, even like when she ducks down here, this is, it feels like it connects here, like she's standing up. Like that's not an intentional duck. It was actually a scene, a part of the shot that didn't look good because she kind of looked hunched back there, probably because she's slowing herself down. But just using those little sections to make it look like she's standing up from the slide, that we didn't have a recovery because that was a Mixamo shot. But now suddenly we use that to blend back
There's
into
a lot
this.
of wizardry, I would say, some magic happening in the edit, big time.
What else? This is we definitely want to put the smoke in some of these shots, which we don't have. And there's a couple of shots here that I just want to add the girls in the background. Like in particular, this shot we definitely did on the stream last week. This one, we have to re-render it. You can see since we were rendering it on the stream,
the motion. Look at that motion blur.
That motion blur is horrible.
Look at that leg.
You can't tell when it's playing, but
well, once you see it, it's really hard to unsee it, though.
Yeah, then you see it. But here I want to put the girls in the background there. Can't wait to add the debris though. The other thing is we added a very heavy, like 16 millimeter texture on this sequence in particular.
This is going to take a long time to clean up in shot modeling.
Yeah, but at least we have
Yeah, but I already know this is like pretty shitty. So
yeah.
the more, so basically, we're at the point where all of our, once he has to edit, and once Miguel approves the edit and we look at it and we think it looks great, then he passes on all the character files to me, and I have to resculpt all the bad deformations. The more the character moves around, like, going from like jumping, kicking, you end up sculpting like almost every frame.
Well, you can see right here, like look at her shoulder. It looks
It's collapsed.
when it's just playing, it looks all right, but once you actually analyze it, you're like, oh my god! So all of that has to now go into shot modeling and
Yeah.
cleaned up.
And it's a lot of work because of the state, the way it's coming out.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's so someone asked, here, has it been almost 6 months since we started? We started in January. So one of the things that is taking longer for me especially is the shot modeling part. So I didn't we probably shot model 90% of all the characters, which is much higher percentage than I expected.
Maybe on a treadmill. We did do one, not on a treadmill, but running in place. It didn't.
We don't
didn't
have a
look like
treadmill either. Yeah.
How is the UE5 render so far? Well, I mean, you're seeing it. This is the UE5 render so far, so we're pretty happy with it.
Pretty happy. There's things to do though, like how do you make sure your motion blur is smooth?
So the question, the UE5 had render layers, so we could use the compositing. So it has render layers, but they're idiotic.
Yeah.
They're so stupid that I'm honestly baffled by how they thought this was a good idea.
They're not very good for compositing.
So I'll give you an example of some of the stuff that's stupid. All right, so let's say this shot here. Let's say you wanted to render these two girls as two render layers. So her in the background and this one in the foreground. That way you could comp them in separately. If you were to render this with layers so that you could get the foreground and the background separate, it will render the foreground separately, but then the background will literally just, wherever she was, will just be a black hole, like a black pixels. So what's the point of that? Because one of the biggest reasons why you would want to do the render layers is because the depth of field you could see in like a thing like this. When something goes completely out of focus, it almost becomes see-through. And on the super shallow depth of field stuff, you start getting the most amount of artifacts. So that would be the perfect one for you to render the foreground separately and then defocus the crap out of it in Nuke. And then it would have a perfect marriage. But if the pixels in the background are black, well, if you render that and it blurs it, you're just going to see the black outline on the bottom layer. Very stupid. I don't know
Yeah,
why
like
they
it's
did
a
that.
very basic thing in VFX to, here's a render layer, render this one object in the foreground separately, and then the background will be intact. This one here leaves a hole in it, and you're like, who the hell works like that? So, yeah.
So do we hire volunteer artists? Well, we don't hire them. If you want to be a volunteer, we don't have a lot of money for this because this is just our thing. But we're working with a few people that are helping us, and two animators are helping us. Christian Borza and Joey Park have helped us. Not on this sequence here. I think I did most of this cleanup. I think I did all this cleanup. And then the Anteater, we had to get a really senior animator for that. That's one that we hired for this because we obviously couldn't motion capture an Anteater.
Yeah, and that guy is Alon.
Yeah, he's amazing.
He's incredible animator. He's
So-
really, really, really good.
So I guess you are right. We have And we just right now what we really need, we need animators and we need effects guys, like dust
We,
and stuff like that.
we would love to have an effects person.
Yeah. And we're not. It's not that we won't pay. I mean, we do have some money, but we just don't have a lot of it. Like, we could never compete with, uh, a big studio. So yeah. But
So
for the most part, like all this sequence, we mostly do the majority of the work. But the work that the other guys have helped us on with is crucial. Like uh, our good friend Chris did all the facial blend shapes initially.
yeah,
We'd be screwed without that. So even though all the sequence here is us, without Chris having done that in the beginning, this would not
he's
hold
really
up.
good. Like anyone can say, "Hey, I want to do facial expressions," but are those facial expressions good?
He's amazing. I
And
mean, he
he's
did the
a
facial expressions for Thanos.
yes. Just so you guys have an idea, he's extremely good.
He's
So
too good for us.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like we're reaching kind of high with him, I think.
Yeah.
So um,
Yeah.
uh,
So yeah.
yeah, and then here's this comment. Viewers not supposed to stop video and look for bugs, intersections. That's true. I think the average viewer doesn't. I think the average viewer might feel something looks weird, but if you ever watch a movie with a bunch of other VFX artists, they do pause frames and say how ugly or good something looks. So, yeah.
So I think modeling and texturing. I don't know if we have much more to model and texture at
Yeah.
this point. I wish.
I wish, yeah. It's more like just painful grunt crap now.
Yeah. Uh, so Peter, the best is to message me. Well, anybody, even modelers. Like if you guys want to reach out to us, the best is just reach out to me directly on Instagram, which is this right here. Um, yeah, so just reach out to us. And if you would have asked us for modeling help
Months
like
ago,
months ago, we
we
would
would
have
have,
jumped on it in a second.
yeah.
It's just we're kind of like at the end.
How long have you guys been working on this? Since January of this year.
Since January, yeah.
So we were hoping to complete this 2 months ago, but we're nearing the end. So after this sequence will be one more.
One more sequence.
Yeah.
The good thing is we got pretty far with this sequence.
And I thought, yes, this is good because we thought this sequence was going to take the longest.
So this leads up to this sequence here. Doesn't have everything, but
There's still some rough stuff.
Ni mawindo yangu, ulichelewa tena. Hebu nionyeshe.
poor little guy.
Jamani. Nitakuwa nimeurusha kwa nguvu sana, si uone? Kweli.
Hivi huyu anataka nini tena?
Mkuki wake.
Tena. Koa, hebu twende. Ala mwanangu, kazi nzuri sana. Wazee wakiona hii watafurahi
There we have to
sana.
fix like the contact of the arm.
Yeah,
There's
so
a bunch of
that
stuff here.
so towards the end, there's still polishing. There's missing cloth sim, missing shot correction,
Yeah.
and a polish missing.
So we go to that up, and then we're gonna go to our ceremony. And oh crap, I might have to.
Give it a second.
Yeah.
So I like the vibe. Love the amount of effort you guys put into this amazing work of art. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. So the shot after that, and this is why I'll show you why we ended up building that, or why Tran ended up building that exterior shot, is we felt that it didn't tie in to our next sequence without having an establishing shot. So
Yeah, I think the camera you're gonna adjust later.
yeah.
It's a one-off shot, meaning the shot I showed you is just like one shot. So one-off shots are like that, where they're quite a bit of work, and you see it one time.
We have a few of those.
Yes, we've always done that. So if you guys didn't say there were missing parts, I wouldn't have even noticed.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
But once it's done, you would have thought it looked better.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's cool that you think that. Okay, so then the next scene, I'm not going to play the whole sequence, but the next scene after that would cut to this here.
Move the mouse.
Hold on. Computer just had a heart attack.
Oh shit! Look at that circle.
Yeah, it's a pretty hard crash.
Thank you very much. We are in the middle of a crash, but we appreciate it.
Yeah.
AK-47.
You know, I don't have these issues until I'm doing the stream. Like as soon as we're doing the stream, everything comes out at once. The computer
I think
slower.
that the active streaming is harder on your card, your graphics card or something. I think you just have to reload. Hold on. Let me see.
Just take over the screen.
Yeah, give me 1 second.
You could just show the ceremony exterior, because
Oops. Okay, sorry. There we are. We were in a screen within a screen within a screen. I'll load some more stuff since I'm talking about some of this stuff. I don't only, do material stuff. To me, though, like the stuff that is new to me is their material system. Other than the modeling stuff, I talked about modeling stuff earlier on, but I'm always really amazed by their material system. So one of the things maybe I can go into is just how I set up the cloth. Also, when I'm clicking around, the first thing I tend to select are the cards, which are pretty annoying, right? If you hit T, it will deactivate the selection of translucent objects. So anything that has some kind of translucency to it will not be selectable. If you hit T again, you can select it. But if you look here and you look at our cloth that we have, light does pass through it, right? So if we're looking at this boat, we feel a sense of light here and light here. I'm using this a lot, like almost abusive amount, in order to make the scene look nicer. And I feel like it really adds a lot when you feel that light is passing through. As far as how to set up a material like this, it's pretty simple. I'll show you Material Master. It's not anything that complicated, but it did take me a couple of tries. when you create a new material, let's make a new material. Give me 1 second. Put it here. Material. I'll just call this cloth demo. And I'll create a material instance. Let's drop this over here. Your basic setup won't support that kind of look. So what you have to do is you're going to select your material node, and you have to change this to masked, right? Mask is pretty important because usually cloth will have some kind of opacity map. And then to get the light to pass through it, I just change this to subsurface, and I make sure to enable two-side. And that really takes care of a lot of it. The two things that are pretty important when you're setting up the map is, one, your base color, of course, and second, your subsurface color. So if your subsurface color is really dark, it's going to affect how much light is actually going to pass through something. So if I try to show this as an example, and I assume, everyone's fine with plugging in textures. But I'll just do this example with just colors. So I'll call this color, and let's say this is just a red color, like this. And let's just create a subsurface color. And call this subsurface. Okay, so right now I have it set to black, which means nothing. Show, let's save that. Knowing how to set up this material does change a lot in how I work. When I make, our process, because it's so homemade, and we're just kind of figuring it out as we go. If I kind of see something I really like a certain effect, I basically use it everywhere. So kind of a one-trick pony. But hey, that's fine. Let's say I put a light here. And here, this cloth material, I'm going to load in my content browser this instance of the material I just made. So it doesn't have any textures. And now I'm going to place a light here. Now, if you don't turn on the two-sided material part, so basically if I jump back here, and if I don't check on two-sided, just see what happens. So I'm going to uncheck it and save. I would only see one side, right? So you can turn that on. I mean, you do have to have it on. Okay. And again, the subsurface will allow light to pass through. But now I have this strong light and nothing's passing through. That's because my subsurface color is black. So I ended up adjusting this a lot. And now that I'm adjusting it, you can see that light is passing through. And I can color this. I do this a lot where I just change the color just so I can understand what's happening, and then crank up the intensity. But to me, this looks really cool, especially once lights are, glowing. And as far as how the light is glowing, it's just controlled by a light function, which is just a material. So it's light function material, which I can set up here. Getting really busy. We'll create a material and create material instance. And I'll show you what my light functions are really simple. So here's my light function. It gives me a flicker. The one thing you want to do when you create a material is just set the material domain to light function. So if I come back here, go to my demo, you can just go under material domain, or actually material domain up here, set this to light function, and you can see all it has is emissive color, right? So you only have one slot to plug it in. You just need a time. So something very basic that works is just create a time node, just like how I did for the previous one. Now the problem with the time, again, is that the values are really high, so it won't do anything. Right, so if I start previewing this, you can see they're just really extreme. So you can plug in a frac node. There's a lot of ways to do this. I think this is pretty simple. It's not as complicated. So now you have something like that, right? And then that could work just by itself. You know, so it's pretty basic. Now, it is not really looping. So, and we don't have a speed controller. So if I want a speed controller, I would just do a multiply. I'll input this before because it seems to work better. And plug this in here. And we'll just use a parameter. Set this to 1, plug it into here. And I'm going to slow it down. But now you have a control for speed. I do want to take a look at this all the time because sometimes things move so quick I can't tell if how they're working, but it's not looping. So it hits 9 and it goes back to 0, right? So if you want to loop, it's up to you what you're doing. You can use the math formula that I used in the flow map, or you should be able to use something like cosine. Cosine is like, I guess it's like a curve. So if I dump in cosine here, I want to add absolute node because I'm getting negative value. But what this is doing is going from 9, and it should be dropping back down, I believe. Let's slow down the speed. Yes. So I can see here it goes 9, 8, 7, and then it goes 0, then 0 back up. And that should work. Right. Anyway, there's different ways to go about it. And then that you just take that material, put it into the flame. And then I usually create a variety of that. So let me go to where my light functions are. And let's say here, drop in this one material. And now you can see it's blinking. And I have a bunch because you don't really want them to all blink at the same time. Right. And I also added, if you take a look at my original one, I added a contrast node, which is similar to power. That way, it's not always going straight to black, right? It can just be going from, point 2 to point 4. So it's not crazy dramatic where it shuts off. But it makes a huge difference. And of course, then all my lights always have a warm temperature because they're fire. And then I have that. So I'm using this a lot for everywhere. If you look at the sequence or the short once it's done, anywhere where I could, I just stuck it because I thought it looked cool. I know it's not very cool of me to say that, but
The what? The smoke?
no, I like to put the cloth everywhere and
Oh
then
yeah,
think.
Tran likes to collect. You do such a good job at it.
Well, no, it's also because of the way light goes through it,
Yeah.
and I'll confess I'm a one-trick pony.
No, far from it. So I'm gonna show this here.
Yeah.
Cool. So this is where it's gonna go, and the sound is not set up for this yet, but let me. So the guy in the foreground, I have to redo him. So when I was doing the extras, one of the things I realized is even though I'm trying to look like different characters, because I did all the movement for the men,
The
you
colors
could still tell that it was the same person, even though I tried to change the way I stood or walked or whatever. It still was obvious. So then I like completely overdid it, and I started walking like with a limp. But now it looks like he's like idiotic. So I need to
it looks like
replace.
bad animation
Yeah,
now.
it looks like bad animation. So I have to replace that guy in the foreground here.
Also, the colors look very desaturated.
They don't look desaturated on my screen.
They do to me.
Okay, well, this camera move is going to change, and then that would cut to the inside.
Na wale tu wanaokaa wanatamani ndio watakaokaa barakoa.
That's the little guy that we saw get chased.
Kutenganisha walio na nguvu kutoka kwa wahafifu. Kuvuka katikati ya miale uwindaji wa kike.
So I won't play that whole thing, but yeah, that's where our little guy ends up. So originally we were gonna make him look cooked, but you couldn't even tell it was the same character.
Well, yeah, like how do you roast
cloth? A
blue cloth guy? It just looks like he's dirty.
So maybe we just figured, okay, they're gonna bake him after this and make some chitlins. So that'll come in after.
It looks tasty.
Yeah.
I think the fruit around it looks tasty. Those fruit were scans. Yeah. Subsurface scattering looks pretty nice for simple objects in Unreal.
Yeah. So okay, so I have 20 minutes left. So one of the things I want to do here is at the end, if you guys saw this sequence that I played, she loses her spear. So they both throw the spear, and one of them throws it so far that she ends up getting it like lost over here. Right? However, in my chase here, I only have one of them throwing the spear at the end, Allah. Okay, so after that, they both debate whose spear it could be. That's why, she goes, "It's mine, you missed again," and then she shows the symbol on the spear, which I have to render that. Didn't we already do that? So I guess
there should have been. I think we did render it. It's just
maybe just didn't.
It's not replaced.
Yeah. So you see that it's her. So the problem is, how the hell do I make that work? Because I have to show that they both throw the spear almost at the same time. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to do a split screen, especially since we're trying to go for like that 70s look with the color and the grading and all this stuff. So you can see over everything, we have like a noise like this. We also have some of this. So all of this is on top of our film. We also have our regular film frame, which has a very subtle vibration to it. You could barely tell, but if you look here,
there's an animation basically.
Yeah, it's subtle, but it's not static at all. You can kind of see it down here. If you look here, there's some movement. So all of that stuff, they're just trying to push that 70s grindhouse feel on this, which is what I kind of always wanted. The audio also, Dan, one of the things he's done, which I don't have here, is he bought an old tape deck, like a professional one, he's doing all the music digitally, but then he's putting it back on tape and then recording it digitally off the tape, so it sounds screwed up. It degrades the quality because we don't want it to sound so perfect. We kind of want it to have that film hiss and degradation. So anyway, so let's do this the split screen here, because I honestly don't even know how I'm going to do it. So hopefully I'll have time to figure it out here. So let's just start in Maya. So I already have a shot for Koa that I already did the cleanup for. So let's take a look at it. I think it's this one here. Actually, I think it's this one. Let's take a look. If it's not that one, it's the other one. Yeah, you can see Citric put a little food plate. Sacrifice for plot purposes. That's exactly right. Ricardo always comments on the anteater. I think he has a connection with the anteater.
Yeah, you connected.
If we ever do a 3D printout, I'll give you one. Okay, so this is this is the original throw. So just so you could see kind of the process in Maya. So the colors are set up like this so that Unreal could detect the shaders and apply the correct shaders on here. So even though it looks crazy here, Unreal will take this all in correctly. So this is not the one. So let me open the other one. It's this one here. So we are hoping to do like a Gnomon premiere at the school. Hopefully that would be ideal, and hopefully have like a Gnomon gallery event. And if we did, like specific to this project, we would totally want to do 3D printouts of all these characters and talk to one of our friends that works at Sideshow Collectibles to maybe do some of the tailoring. Okay, so let's just start from nothing. So just going to open up the model, the rigged model. Okay. And we'll go to our create reference, and I'm just going to go to my mocap. Whenever I'm showing this, I just feel like I'm chopping wood because it's so not exciting, but this is just the reality of it. So Koa, throwing spear. That should be it. Yeah. So I think it's this one. It's not this one, it's the other one. There's only two. So I'll just link that mocap. So I like that one right there. Boom, and she falls and then she recovers. I like that a lot. That's great. All right, so let's find the spot. So maybe start around 375. So I just set. This is all totally raw mocap from Xsense. It's just been cleaned up, automatically cleaned up by the Xsense software, but no manual work has been done at this point. So kind of gonna keep it up to here because I might use this for another shot. I might use it for 2 shots for the throw, and I feel that over here I'm missing a shot. So going back to this here, I don't like that they throw this and then she's running in and then this one is already just standing there. I don't like that. I feel like in this shot here, I might redo this shot somehow or whatever. I just need a shot where you see Koa standing up because she's obviously a klutz. She trips, a bunch of times. Here she trips. So we just want her to be the weaker of the two. So I'm going to keep that. Let's see what else is there. So you can see she did it a bunch of times. This one's pretty good too. Very extreme. I kind of like that one even better. Yeah, I kind of like some Mike. She did a little Michael Jordan there. Okay, so I might use this. Which one do you like more, Tran? This right here? What do you guys like more? This here?
Or
This throw? Or this throw? I think I like the second one. The first one.
do the second one.
I like how hyperextended her arms get here.
Well, that's what you're going to see anyway. Look at that leg. The leg like shrinks.
Right there?
Yeah.
No, it's bucking. The ankle is busting.
No, yeah, the ankle is twisting up.
The follow through is nice. So which one? This one here? This is number 2.
Do number 1 again.
So I like that hyperextension, a little Michael Jordan going on there. And then the other one is this one. The legs, though, like you could see, like the pose never hits.
Yeah, I think the second one then.
Yeah, so let's, like that right there is kind of cool. Here it's less, still nice, but I mean, it's the same actress, so it's not like it's going to be dramatically different. All right, so let's come over here. So I'm going to start it at 980. Okay, she throws, she falls. I actually like how she stumbles forward a lot more like that. To 1105. So I just set 1105. Love it. Come over here. Bake to custom rig. You can see all the keys are going to appear here. So now this is baked into the actual skeleton. So now I could come over here, file, reference editor, and disconnect our skeleton. Hey, I love pineapple pizza. You don't want to hear a funny story? The other day we had some friends over at the house, and I ordered a Hawaiian pizza, and I got so much shit for it. Like they were like, "Oh my god, you like Hawaiian pizza?" Blah blah blah. So I ordered 2 pizzas because I knew that someone was going to give me shit over it. That Hawaiian pizza vanished in 2 seconds, and then that cheese pizza just lingered. So I think a lot of people say they don't like pineapple on pizza, but everyone knows pineapple on pizza is the best.
Well, it's like fruit on meat. It's delicious.
Yeah.
You ever had like chutney on pork or whatever?
Yeah.
We have another supporter.
We have 2 Hawaiian pizza lovers.
Okay.
So, all right. So you can see that's cleaned up now. Okay. And you can see the hands here got completely busted. These gloves, the gloves, honestly, if I were to rebuy this suit, the suit itself, I think is fantastic. The
Well, it's-
Accents gloves,
They're-
I don't know.
They're super problematic too.
Super problematic. I always get stuff like this.
Yeah, they don't record and then their connection breaks constantly. Like they have a license problem. So when you're trying to record, all of a sudden the glove stops working.
Yeah. All right, so I got to fix that. So what am I going to do? I'm just going to select this here. I'm just going to select those fingers and add that to an animation layer. And let's just call this right hand. Great. Come over here. Add that to another one. Call this left hand. Okay. So I'm just going to focus on this hand for now. So just come over here. You can see totally screwed up. So I open up this studio library, free plugin. You can pose your hands however you want. So I'll just come over here and I'll look at what's there. And I'm like, okay, that's probably something like this. And then I could blend it. So it's definitely not that. So I'm going to just keep it like this. Okay. And then I'll just select objects and add a keyframe. Move forward. So this is just additive. So it's not overriding what was there all along. So you can see here the fingers just get super screwy. So I don't want to completely undo everything I did here. So here I could just fix this. And this is on an animation layer, so it's not destructive. It's just going to add this fix that I'm doing to what's already there. Put that over there. Grab that, grab that. So you can see the thumb is super hyper extended there. I kind of like that though. Select objects and I'm just going to key it. So I'm just going to problematic keyframes and just fixing it. Okay, coming over here, let's take a look. A little too hyper extended, so I'm just going to tone that down a tiny bit. I also feel like it's bending in a weird way. Okay. Select objects, key. I'll also just select these guys and just kind of make the pose a little bit more interesting. Maybe grab these guys here, pull them out. Grab these guys here. So it's still the same, but we have some serious issues with our rig. So just kind of fix that. Select objects. I'll key it. Come over here. So you can see some wonky stuff. I'll just zero this out. Bring this down. That fixes that thumb. So you can see crazy issues here. I don't want to undo the mocap, but it's just cleaning it up a little bit. And you can see this is like, you don't have to be an animator necessarily to know that that finger looks like shit and just fix it. Okay, so we're still maintaining the main pose. Move forward. Like that. Okay, so this usually means she fell. I could already tell. So then the gloves got really screwed up. So what I'll probably do here, it's such a disaster, that I'd rather just come over here to my studio library, find a shape that's similar to that. something like that. And I'm going to strategically not show the hands when she falls because I don't want to deal with that. So I'm okay. Right here, she's starting to fall. Let's
That tool works pretty well.
oh, without this thing will take forever.
Without this, everyone would have like penguin hands. Question: what is the best tools for cleanup?
For cleanup,
Yeah, you're just using Maya.
Yeah,
Maya
just-
layers.
Maya layers are all I use. I'm not an animator, so we're hacks. We figure out how to do this stuff, but
We don't specialize in animation.
yeah. Not that we don't specialize. Like we really don't specialize in animation. Like we're just kind of doing this. We just know how to make a final product, but yeah. So if this had to be like hand animated, we would just get nothing done.
Yeah.
That's why we had to do this with mocap. And I do really like the XN suit. The one thing I want to do is upgrade it to also use the Vive tracker, so you could have it use the so the XN suit is inertia based system, but if you get the Vive trackers can help it know its position in the world better, because inertia basis basically means it just knows what the movement is doing based on the inertia, just like your iPhone. But if you were to try to do this, it would have a very hard time because it's figuring it out just based on the inertia of the hand. So
your
when you
video
do
is
that,
not,
it might end up doing.
your video is not showing.
Oh, I don't have my camera on.
Well, it's only showing your full screen.
Well, if you try to have your two index fingers touch, you would have a very hard time doing that. That's basically the point.
Yeah. So our mocap system can't tell the distances between things. So you might be recording the actor clapping the hands,
And the
it
hands
looks,
will just go right through each other.
yeah, like they look like they're going through, or they're clapping elbows or something weird like that.
Yeah. So you can see it's still what's underneath the mess here is actually good. Like the pose of the hands is fine. You just kind of have to be like, okay, I don't know why, but the fingers all got stupid there for a second. It's mostly the space between them. I honestly think this could have been fixed if on the rig we set limits. So like, hey, this finger can't bend this way, obviously. And we didn't do that. We should have done it. And at this point,
It's too late.
yeah. But you can see it's fairly quick. It's not like this is like taking an insane amount of time either.
Yeah. I think normally, if you guys look at our previous stuff that we've done, we tend to just do more live action, aiming more for photoreal type stuff. So we'd have like real actors, real people. And this is our first time doing like something completely animated. And then we kind of expected to have some issues. So the design of the characters are not realistic for a reason. And everything is just kind of soft intentionally, just to make life easier, so that if you ever notice you watch something stop motion or whatever, if something bends and it looks a little weird, you just kind of forgive it, because it's not real and it's not trying to be real.
Yeah, and we also didn't want it to be so stylized either. Like Letitia that does the streams, also her stuff is very beautiful, very, very, very stylized.
And that stuff has a really nice polish.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
But it's almost so stylized that you expect a certain type of animation from that,
Yeah, like
which we're not going to do with mocap.
no, like yeah, the animation is more stylized. The faces are more stylized. This is more. The art direction was meant to be rough, not polished. Like if I think about like Disney type stuff, it's it's really beautiful and polished.
Yeah.
And I think that was just kind of, too much for this, especially for our limitations with just a small team. So we went for a very rough look.
Yeah. And that's why we're putting like the film grain and we're softening the footage. Like we're trying to degrade it as much as possible. I don't necessarily like super sharp stuff. I'm not like the type of person we're making fun of this that would like buy VHS tapes to this day. I'm not a purist like that, but I appreciate the look of VHS. And we wanted this to look like crappy 16 millimeter. Because I just thought I wanted this to have that grindhouse feel to it, exploitation film. So you can see it's not fun, but it's there's worse things to do. It's kind of fun. It's kind of like peeling glue off your hands. You ever did that with Elmer's glue? That's kind of how this is.
It
No?
looks like peeling potatoes.
Did you ever do that? Did you used to peel? Like,
No, I never did that, but I sat next to kids who would eat glue and do that.
Well, I didn't eat glue tram, but I did definitely. I would still do. I think I did it like recently, didn't I?
No, you did get glue in your hand, but I don't think it was on purpose.
No, it was on purpose. I love putting Elmer's glue on my hand.
Yeah. Anyway, we're at a 303.
Hold on, I want to finish this.
Okay.
Okay, so
Jeez. Well, that's still not as painful as shot modeling.
I don't have to do this for every shot though. Like I really could probably just do this, and that's just use the ones on Studio Library, and that probably would do more than enough. Right, so I'm going to do that here just to wrap this up. So I do think that thumb is a little bit too hyperextended, so I'll just use Studio Tools one, then blend in between the two of them. So I'll show you like what I'm doing here. So this here, I could just come over here to Studio Tools, click on any one of these, like let's say a fist, right? And this is a screenshot that I took in here. Very simple interface, and this thing is free. It's incredible. And now I could just control the blend amount. So now it's like, okay, just add the fist, but not all the way. Then come to the last frame over here. You can see it has like the crazy claw. If your fingers look like that, your mom would leave you in a creek. So let's just put this over here.
We have a question. Oops, wrong one. Is there a thinking as animating with VR goggles?
Have I thought about doing it? I would love to do. I would love to do everything. I'd love to. I think the VR stuff is super interesting, but I just don't see an audience, like a real audience for that, like a wide audience. It's unfortunate because I think it's incredible, but this is just too much effort to do something to then limit your audience to someone that could afford a $2,000 goggle system. But I would love to. We did do a VR thing actually a long time ago.
In Unreal.
Yeah, we didn't know Unreal back then, but I was hired to direct it. It was for this ocean conservation thing with the main actor from the Entourage and Leonardo DiCaprio's fund financed this thing. It was pretty cool, but it was too early. Unreal was not where it is right now.
No, it was like the beginning where everyone was getting excited about VR. You didn't have version 5, and you didn't have ray tracing, so it
didn't look very good. I actually spoken to those guys that we did that for recently, and they've seen what we've been doing, and they're like, now we're ready. So we did do it. It was cool. It was played at the Paris Climate Summit. So they did it with a whole chair and everything, and there's a photo of like John Kerry sitting on our thing, which is kind of cool. So I love that tech, but I just don't know if that's on the list of priorities. Our next thing is we want to do whatever we do next. We want it to be live action with a lot of Unreal effects.
Yeah. Well, basically, Unreal replacing rendering for us.
Yeah. All right. So you can see here. Again, I'm not going to show the hands ever because the whole thing is she's going to throw the spear. So the shot would probably be like this. The most dramatic thing possible would probably be something like that. I probably would be tracking her. Well, it's all about the actual right there. So maybe something like that. And then I would obviously have to cut to the spear actually going into the would have to cut to that. I also probably want to do like one of those Robin Hood shots where the camera's tied to the spear and it's like traveling through space.
Oh, right, like the arrow. You're following the arrow, basically.
Yeah, I remember. I don't know if Robin Hood was the first movie to do that, the Kevin Costner one, but that's the first time I remember seeing that.
I can see that in a Kevin Costner movie.
Well, the thing is, that was right at the crossroads of CG and practical effects, and I think that was the first movie where I saw that. And I was like, "Holy crap, that's incredible!" And yeah, and if you're a Star Wars collector, that Kevin Costner movie actually has an important role in Star Wars history because if you take off the heads and you take off Friar Tuck's clothing, you realize it's just a Gamorrean guard figure that Kenner repurposed. So it's some. I actually have them right here somewhere. My camera is not set up, but yeah. All right, so now the spear. So let's just get the spear in there. So I'm a big toy collector, if you guys haven't noticed from our background. Okay, so let's go to assets. Okay. So we have this, and I want her to be holding it. And this is going to be a little bit tough because we might have to make some tweaks here so that the spear doesn't cross through her face or other parts of her body. So let's just kind of put it in position here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to press insert and move the pivot down to over here. So I don't go crazy. And if I'm not mistaken, actually, see how she throws this. Okay, so do it like that. Let's rotate it at an angle that looks good. This. Okay, now I'll just grab that, shift select that, constraint parent. Hands look busted. Select objects. And I have a shape already saved in my studio library for that. Okay, so probably tweak this a little bit, the spear's position. So I'm gonna fix it before I parent it. So I just deleted the, not the parent, the parent constraint. Should be clear about that. There is a difference. You parent it, you can't animate it not parenting. Whereas if it's a parent constraint, you can. The reason why that's important is because at a certain point she's gonna have to throw the spear, and if it's just regular parenting, then the spear will never be able to leave her hand. So we have to do it this way. Okay. So let's select that these objects, and you can see that the spear is now going to. So you can see some issues right there. It's going right through her leg. So I'm going to put that wrist into animation layer. Okay, and now just animating so that she doesn't stab herself in the eye. Like this is literally the don't run with scissors portion of the show. So let's put that in there. Do you ever do a parent constraint tree adding offsets? I haven't. Because I haven't really done a lot of complicated stuff, Peter, because you've like gone to, you're like a real animator. I'm not. So all the stuff I've done is just enough to get me to finish this project. But so I try to keep everything as simple as possible. Okay, so let's keep going. Just kind of adjusting this a little bit. She did run with a real spear, not a real spear, actually like a broomstick. But so it's not like she was running with nothing. So that's why it's actually kind of doing an okay job. That's a problem, but you see, it's fairly simple to fix. And Koa is supposed to be the clumsy one of the two. So all of this like wobbling all over the place is actually a great thing for her character.
Yeah. She's not, I mean, hopefully you can tell at this point one is a better hunter than the other.
I thought I had to reverse the spear direction, and I did. So I have to redo this later, but that's okay. It would be very simple. Okay, so let's come around here. So right there is around where the spear would kind of go flying. Right there would be like, I'm going to do it like this. Why is it not? Okay, so what I could do now, oh, I have the weight set to 0 on this first, I don't know why. Okay, so there it goes. So what I would do now is I could come over here, right there at a keyframe. You can see if you animate it now, it looks like, oh my God, I just broke this. right? Well, as soon as you add a keyframe, that object gets this thing called blend parent. It wasn't there before. So this is something that is really confusing. As you can see, it's not there initially. So when I was doing this at first, I'm like, I don't see that stupid thing. What the hell am I doing wrong? And then the minute I add a keyframe, boop, there it is. So if that's set to 0, it's not going to blend with the parent. If that's set to 1, you got to add a keyframe, which I didn't do. Key selected. It now blends with the parent. Now here, blends with parent 0, key selected. So right there, sphere goes flying. You can see I did it the opposite direction, so the sphere is going the direction that it shouldn't be going. And then you have to animate this, whatever distance you choose. So I'm going to just, it's not going to look great, but you'll get an idea. And there you go. So now she's holding the spear, and then whoop, she lets it go. Start bringing this down. You could get some weight, some angle. And you can move it, as far as you want. And you could adjust the timing. The other thing that's very helpful is you can come over here and visualize the actual throw. So you can come over here. Okay. Give it a little bit of an arc. But anyway, that helps me seeing the actual animation curve in 3D, because you're like, oh, okay, I get it. It makes much more sense to my gorilla brain than seeing a bunch of keys inside of the graph editor. So if we were ready, so let's just say if you're ready to go, which I'm not. I was about to override my rig. That would have been fun. So let's go to shots. So just give this a second, and we'll bring this into Unreal just so you could see the whole process. I still have to fix the hands a lot more. I still have to do the facial expressions, which I did not do. So you can see here, she still has the claw, but just so we could go through the process here. So I'm going to hide everything. show polygons, select everything here. Cache, Alembic cache, export selection to Alembic. Again, this is not going to be by any means final. Sure that I name it correctly. Oh, well, I'm about to show you. So,
Yeah, so all our
early streams was us basically figuring that out.
Yeah.
Because we didn't understand how to do any of this stuff. So
Well,
we're like, how the hell do we do that?
Yeah, and also when you import Alembics, you can't just import it because you can import it incorrectly and then Unreal will crash.
Yeah.
So it does have like messed up settings. So, and then that's the other thing that we feel is slow about Unreal is how they deal with Alembics. So we use Alembics for our claw simulation and for the actual animation of the characters. But they take a while to load. So if you load up like a level or map and you have Alembics in them, it's slow. It's very, very, very slow actually. Whereas when you're working with Alembics in Maya, you load them in, they just pop in. And they work really quickly. I just think the Alembics are new. I mean, they very much seem like they're new. When we did the fellowship, we were doing it in Unreal version 4. And I don't think it supported motion blur back then. And they were brand new. So maybe over time it would just get faster.
Yeah. So, okay, so I'm going to try something out before. So I'll go to my sequences, my chase. I'm going to minimize this because I still have it. And I'm going to go to my ala throw spear. There it is. Okay. So here's my sequencer now. So this is ala, looking badass, and what I am. All right, cool. So I have an Alembics folder in each sequence. And in here, I'll have a new folder, and let's call this Koa Throw Spear Fall. Okay. Just go to import. So I find my shot. Koa Throw Spear. There it is. I added an R for whatever reason. Okay, so you have this here. Merge meshes. Import type, skeletal. This is one of the most confusing things if you're tuning in for the first time, is like you would think, oh, it's geometry cache. It's skeletal is the one that works the best. Okay. Base calculation type. The default is percentage based. I thought, okay, let's do some compression. I guess that's good. I started getting vertices shooting around, so I set it back to no compression. Okay, this one here is the most important setting. Skip empty frames at start of Alembic sequence. Okay, so what does that mean? Here you could see we're starting at frame 980 to frame 1105. Now, most companies might force you to like start at frame 0, but because of the nature of this production, like every shortcut we can do, like just offsetting keys or whatever, all that stuff just takes too long. So I want to export this out. Well, the problem is if you do not click this guy and you bring in an Alembic sequence that started at frame 980, it's going to duplicate this model, because all an Alembic is a blend shape. it'll bring in 980 copies of the eyes, of the hair, of the mouth, of the spear, of the dress, of the shoes, for 980 frames that you do not need.
So it wants to start from frame 0.
It wants to start at frame 0. So it'll give you 980 of these models that you do not need. So even if you brought them in, you're still carrying 980 of these models that are not even moving. Okay? Your file will take, first of all, it'll take an hour to import.
It'll be huge.
It'll be gigantic, and it'll most likely crash. So when we first started getting this stuff in here and we didn't know about this, we were like, oh my God, it's taking like an hour to bring in a file. We might not be able to do this. This might be the thing that sinks us. That button, if there was a t-shirt with that button on it, I would buy it. So, okay, find materials. Find materials is important. If you already have materials assigned, I have an... so I didn't delete this stupid namespace. So I'm going to have to relink the materials. It's just delete, right? No, it's not. It's merged with. So because I didn't delete the stupid namespace, I'm going to have to reassign the materials manually in Unreal. It's not going to be a big deal, but just so you know. If I had find materials and I had deleted that namespace, it would just assign the materials automatically.
Yeah.
Rotation 90 degrees. On X. Okay.
And scale, you have -1.
That's the default, yeah.
Okay.
So there you go. And now we go to import. And now we just hang back for a second.
And play drums on the desk.
Yeah, that's the drums from the intro. All right. See ya. FHX Sculptor. See, you gotta go to sleep. So, good night. All right, so this is coming in. It's gonna take a moment because this one has a lot of frames. I probably should have just used like 50 frames or whatever. So right now it's importing the Alembic and converting it into an Unreal format. This is partially what takes a long time is because you bring in an Alembic file into Maya, it's always referencing that .abc file. It's never importing it directly. This does bring it in directly. So if you did then delete your Alembic file, it would be gone. You would still be able to play in Unreal. If you delete your Alembic file on a Maya file, like in your directory, your Maya file won't work anymore. It'll need that file to stay in that same folder. This is grabbing it, copying it, and moving it into your projects folder. That's why it takes so long to import. So this takes a moment. It takes a few minutes, but it used to take, when I didn't press that button, it would literally take like an hour. And sometimes you bring something in and you're like, oh crap, I forgot to hide so-and-so piece, another hour. Oh my God, I have to move the wrist a little bit, another hour. So it just became like unbearable. So that button is huge, okay? So there it is. Oh, it's still coming in. It's almost done. And it's not the end yet. There's one more step. Okay. So there it is. Now I just grab it and drag her into the scene. Okay. I'm going to position her kinda, and then I'm going to come over here to my sequencer, drag her into my sequencer, go to frame 0, or my first frame, in this case, frame 008, animation, and there'll only be one animation available, which is the Alembic file. Okay? And now you can see here that she is in position. It's so funny. I'm like, why can't I see her? She's right there. Okay. So this is going to require a different camera altogether, but I just wanted to see what they look like side by side. So I might put her slightly behind.
Also, that white card back there is the fog media card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The problem.
That's the problem with the fog media card. If it doesn't load, it just loads like a white thing.
So you can see now we have both of them. So what I would probably do, the smarter thing for me to do would be to grab her. Let's find her here. Move her off to the side like this, right? And I'm just going to press a new camera button. And I'm just going to reframe this, try to put both of them into the shot. So this guy's a problem, but he might be needed in another shot. So if that's the case, grab that, throw it into sequencer, track, actor hidden in game, and that's just for this one shot. Now he's gone. There he is. Another one. Drag him into sequencer, track, actor hidden in game, hide that. Okay, great. Let's go back. Okay, so that shot is not very inspiring. So let's do the things that I usually my go-to. So this is my camera here. So the first thing I always do is I always start with at least a 50mm lens. That's my personal taste. Camera aperture to 1. That's going to give us a shallow depth of field. Adjust my focal length. Sorry, my focal distance. And then let's set our camera speed to like 2. And let's try to get both of the girls in there. And the tough thing is trying to get the best of both at the same time. I kind of like Koa being left behind here. So what I'll probably do is I'll come over here. This is my camera, and this is what the camera can see. Transform. I'm adding a keyframe. Come over here. Again, the faces are not on Koa. This one is Koa in particular. It's not ready. So let's adjust that. So I'm just kind of putting my keyframes where I want. So over here, I'm going to travel with them. Don't like that angle very much. So I might not even use that part of the shot, but okay, let's angle this. Let's add a keyframe. and adjust the focus distance. And add a keyframe. Add a keyframe. Let's try to get a little bit more of Koa. So I'm going to try to move her in. The problem is I'm afraid that they're going to bump into each other, but that might be perfect. So the closer I could get them together, the better, because then I could get a much nicer framing. Probably what I'll do to make that look even better is I'll go to like an 80 millimeter. Is my favorite lens. It'll flatten the space between them a little bit. Let's add a keyframe, adjust our focus distance. This is a tough shot. I know I'm not gonna nail this immediately today, but I almost feel like let's play with the focus distance. Back. And I'm okay with one being left behind there, because that's kind of the point of the whole story. I kind of like starting with one, actually. I think that's kind of cool. So that's the cool thing, is you sometimes get these happy accidents, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool that we start with one, and all of a sudden the camera will snap into both of them. That's kind of cool. So here I'm going to still want what I might do, I might cheat this a little bit. And just kind of animate her. Moving up a little bit, which is a total cheat. Okay, let's go over here. So I would cut before that, because I gotta keep the momentum. I need to have that spear go flying into the anteater. Okay, let's come over here. I like that face. Again, this one doesn't have any facial animation on her yet. But what's cool is by doing this like this, I could just update any parts of this. And this spear is going way too slow, the one that Koa's throwing. That's fine.
It's slow-mo. But you can adjust that later.
Yeah. So
It's really also hard to gauge until you put it in a shot, though.
yeah,
right.
but yeah.
Like with the camera, then you can see it.
No, I mean I know that I'm not crazy about this camera, but it's okay. Kind of showing a general workflow. Sometimes we nail it on these things, and other times it's like, that's not it for sure. I know this is too important of a shot to not like completely love it. So
Sorry.
but you can start getting. The cool thing is that you feel a little bit of the rivalry by having them both in the frame like that together, which I kind of like. And let me just throw the shaders on her real quick, just so we can take a quick look. And then we'll wrap it up. So I'm just going to start dragging the materials on there.
We should go. Someone else is logging in. We might be hitting into someone's stream.
Okay. Let me just put this last thing in here. And the last thing is the spear. So again, this is not even remotely final, but you can see it definitely helps seeing them. Okay. Anyway, I'll see you guys.
Yeah, we'll see you guys next week. This went a little bit over, but thanks for hanging out. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Ty. Thank you, Elvira.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Thank you, everyone that's in the stream watching. So,
Yeah, talk soon. Thank you. So hold on, I have to press this button.